ChiliShop.com.
Fox News, I'm Tom Graham. The Trump administration claims they're cracking down on fraud involving taxpayer-funded programs. Vice President J.D. Vance warning states to do more.
For those states that refuse to get serious about fraud, we are going to turn off that anti-fraud money. And if we continue to find problems, we can turn off other resources within their state Medicaid programs as well.
Trump administration's increased focus on fraud started with investigations in Minnesota. A former lawyer from South Carolina who was convicted of murdering his wife and adult son has won a new trial.
The state Supreme Court in South Carolina is granting Alex Murdaugh a new trial. The former attorney from a prominent legal firm bearing his family name was sent to prison for life in 2023 after being convicted of killing both his wife Maggie and adult son Paul.
Fox's Evan Brown. America is listening to Fox News.
Get more on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your trusted dealer serving Southwest Virginia and surrounding areas for over 50 years. With more selection, more value, and more finance options. Plus, your trade is worth more. Shop local and save more with straightforward pricing, plus exceptional service and selection. Your search ends at the Motor Mile. Choose from over 900 quality pre-owned vehicles, plus a massive selection of new car brands in Southwest Virginia. Honda, Hyundai, Toyota, Subaru, Kia, Chevrolet, Mitsubishi, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, and now Buick. Plus, the used car superstore. 12 new car brands, 900 used vehicles. One amazing buying experience. Volume selling means volume pricing, and we've got more than any other dealer in the area. The Sheeler Motor Mile delivers choices. Here's the difference. Sheeler owns the finance company and makes getting approved for credit simple and easy on the Motor Mile. Flexible financing options for every budget to get you on the road fast. Get more on the Sheeler Motor Mile with a certified friendly staff and no games, no gimmicks. The Sheeler Motor Mile, now in Christiansburg, Radford, and Pulaski. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com.
The clock is ticking. Time is running out for Virginia citizens to purchase modern sporting rifles and magazines from Big Boys Guns. Beat the July 1st deadline. Right now, the selection is robust at Big Boys Guns. ARs, AKs, and the most popular handguns will soon be banned from sale in the state of Virginia. Don't wait. Visit Big Boys Guns before the inventory is gone and not allowed to return. Shop 24/7 at BigBoysGuns.com and in store on Route 460 in Blue Ridge.
Your insurance company tells you to go to a certain shop. Once they give you the inflated estimate, you think, uh-oh, better get Maaco. For over 50 years, Maaco has been repairing and painting cars. Maaco is not in contract with insurance companies. They work for you. They don't give insurance companies discounts and rebates you'd never get. At Maaco, you'll get an honest assessment of your repair work by trained, certified professionals. You'll get the choice to pay with insurance or out of pocket, whichever makes sense for you. So if you have an insurance claim, get a second opinion at Maaco on Kemper Street in Lynchburg.
You're stepping into the fast lane on the VTRN Sports app, 93.3 FM and 1320 AM Lynchburg, or by asking Alexa or Google Home, open VTRN Sports Lynchburg. Now, take the fast lane through the topics that matter across the Commonwealth. This is the Fast Lane with Ed Lane.
Bear in mind, some of this is probably because I'm a child of the 90s. But also, there's the element to me being a diehard Philadelphia sports fan growing up and still a Philly sports fan, although, with combination of faith and family and kids getting older, it gets tempered a little bit. Still love sports, but the perspective of going overboard, like many Philly fans do, gets tempered. But I think this is one of the most underappreciated things that's been mentioned in the last week and change. And that is, after the passing of first Ted Turner and then less than 48 hours later, Bobby Cox, the former owner, Ted Turner, and manager Bobby Cox of the Atlanta Braves, just an appreciation of their legacy. Now, look, I get it. There's the whole, we'll never see anything like this again. There'll never be another one like him or her or them if you're talking about multiple people. I get that's often used and it is often exaggerated, but it should be brought up for these two. They came along at a time where they were able to change the way organizations were thought of and operated. Much like the Dallas Cowboys.
It's looking a little bit like those Dallas Cowboys is peaking in the 90s.
The Atlanta Braves kind of peaked in the 90s, but there's a difference. The Braves do have a championship and multiple seasons of postseason success in the 2000s and within the last 10 years. So there's a big difference. But the reality is, a lot of what the Braves are now in baseball is because of the foundation of the combination of Ted Turner and Bobby Cox. Like, it wasn't just one, it was both. I know we kind of touched on this with Ted Turner passing away last week, but not knowing that Bobby Cox would die, a few hours after that, or at least after our comments. But it's the combination of the two. And again, all this is coming from a Philadelphia sports fan who is a Phillies fan in particular. There's 1993 where they lose to the Toronto Blue Jays in gut-wrenching fashion with Joe Carter's touch-em-all walk-off home run in Game 6 of the World Series. And not even sniffing postseason glory until 2008 when I was blessed to be there with my brother to witness the Phillies win the World Series in Philadelphia and then walking out of the ballpark to what was literally with all due respect to John Manson and his group at aseaofred.com, a sea of red from the ballpark all the way down Broad Street. It's the craziest thing. The image is still etched in my mind, and it's one of the most awesome memories I have with my brother. Life has changed for both of us since then, for the better, but it has changed since then. But, as a Phillies fan, there wasn't a lot of success, and there was a lot of envy for the Atlanta Braves. The Phillies have one world championship. The Braves have two. So do the Marlins. But the Braves are by far a better model of consistency during this run. It's been two iterations of it. It was the 1990s run with Bobby Cox and Ted Turner's vision and the way they embraced, consistency with Bobby Cox, standards that were very good. It's a shame for them the Yankees came along, which were the Dodgers before the Dodgers, where the Yankees just had a larger payroll, and ultimately it's what got the Braves a number of times in postseason play. And there were other disappointments, losing to teams like the Astros. That's dating ourselves because they're in the AL now, but this was when they were in the NL, or the Padres or other scenarios. But it's a level of consistency. And you combine that with the media landscape in the 90s was not what it is now, where every team and every game is available, if not on television, live television, it's available on some streaming platform, either regular streaming packages, or you can just buy a particular package for a particular sport. Like, we are so fortunate in terms of what's available to watch. Granted, you have to pay an arm and a leg. You have to pay lots of
dollar bills, y'all.
Unlike listening to games like in the NBA playoffs, Cavaliers-Pistons game tonight for free on your home for the best play-by-play for free, 93.3 FM in the VTR in Sports app. But part of it's the lore of that. And the visionary part of this is Ted Turner. He had the vision to not only buy the Atlanta Braves, but as the owner of the Turner broadcast stations. I don't even know if True TV existed back then. If you know, Fastlane, Edlane, or Trey Law VT, you can weigh in.
No, True TV is relatively new, but it did really get its feet by being the home of one of the greatest TV shows of all time, Impractical Jokers.
Well, that's a good one. I thought you were going to go with Cops. That's kind of my alley.
that wasn't on True TV. Like,
Cops was Fox, actually.
Yeah, but like I think it went TBS. It obviously started with TBS. Then it went TNT, and TNT was new. And then because that became a big thing because it had WCW Monday Nitro.
And TNT also had the Three Stooges. Let's not forget that.
Yeah, and then it got the NBA, and that was and then True TV came on relatively recently, and like the mid 2010s, and it had now Impractical Jokers I think is on TBS, but I mean it's one of my favorite shows of all time.
Well, it's good, and it is, and obviously Ted Turner was the one who built the whole dynasty of them.
Yeah, what True TV started out with, it had like Lizard Lick Towing and that other towing show with the that was like in Florida with the big black lady. I forget her name, but you know what I'm talking about. Those type of shows.
I do know what you're talking about.
Those type of shows were on True TV.
Yeah, Dog the Bounty Hunter type shows.
Yeah, I think that was on True.
Was that A&E?
That was A&E. Like Storage Wars was on A&E. I think Parking Wars was on True TV. Like they would just be following these cops who give out parking tickets.
Yeah, I remember that. They had a lot of Philadelphia in there. Ironically, they had some Memphis, Tennessee. That was the first 48 on A&E. Got to use my M-Town symbol again today. I survived 4 years there. I reserve the right to do that. But Ted Turner's vision for putting the Braves on TBS made them, to many people's eyes, a national brand. Now, I think there's a bit of exaggeration from this tribute, which was actually really well done last night by Braves Vision for Bobby Cox and Ted Turner.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Atlanta Braves are deeply saddened at the loss of two iconic members of the Atlanta Braves family. One who is attributed with transforming the Braves into America's team with his visionary leadership, and the other for creating the winning culture in the clubhouse still evident today. Please direct your attention to Braves Vision for a special video tribute to our good friend and former owner, Ted Turner, and our treasured skipper, number 6, Bobby Cox.
So the America's team is an exaggeration. And I'll be the first to admit that while we love to poke fun at the Dallas Cowboys,
It's looking a little bit like those Dallas Cowboys is peaking in the 90s.
the reality is they do earn the moniker of America's team. Maybe America in the sense of, we think we're all that and we're not as great as we think we are, kind of like the Cowboys, who fans often think they're all that, and yet they have not made a conference championship game since the old millennium, back in the day, literally back in the day for the Dallas Cowboys. They peaked in the 90s. But they are America's team. They still draw the highest ratings. They're still a brand to which we gravitate when we have a chance to carry multiple games in the 1 or 4 o'clock window on VTRN Sports, your home for great play-by-play, college, high school, professional, wherever it may be. But the Atlanta Braves were the Southern team, and that's the thing. Ted Turner had the vision of making them America's team. But while they weren't America's team, I still think the Yankees were that. I think the fact that you made 5 World Series with Bobby Cox, but only won one of them, contributes to it. Meanwhile, the Yankees won 4 of those championships during that run with Posada, with Pettit, with Jeter, with Bernie Williams, with whose name am I forgetting out of that bunch? The core 4.
The greatest closer of all
Mariano
time.
Rivera,
the
yes.
The first unanimous Hall of Famer in the history of Major League Baseball.
Mariano Rivera. He is the
Because-
greatest closer of all time. I don't think
Because
there's
for some reason, like, for example, someone did not want to vote Ichiro in for the first time, or Ken Griffey Jr. for the first time, because
can't have unanimous. Just that's the way it's always been. I mean, could you imagine if we operated life like that? That's the way it's always been. First of all, like we wouldn't be using GPS, no cell phones. That's the way it's always been. Got to still look for the payphone that doesn't exist anymore. Got to use the old rotary dial. I mean, could you imagine if that's how we operated in life? Like, that's the most ridiculous thing. But anyway, the Atlanta Braves, I think that's part of it. But reaching for the stars of being America's team, they landed on being the Southern team. Like, they clearly were the team of the South. I know of plenty of people from all walks of the South. This was the case in Virginia when I lived in North Carolina for a period of time, when I went to college down in Memphis, which pulled a lot of people from Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, all those areas, Kentucky. The Braves resonated in that pocket. Again, they're not resonating in the Northeast. They're not resonating in the upper Midwest or on the West Coast. The Dodgers, the Cubs, the Red Sox, and Yankees have had strong brands in those areas. But the Braves were a Southern team because of what they created and their consistency in being a staple of not just being on TBS, but producing a winning enough brand over a long enough period of time. Again, only 1-4 record in World Series for Bobby Cox. But listen to everything else he accomplished. And this is where the legacy, again, as a Phillies fan, I'm envious, but as somebody that just likes sports and can appreciate the consistency of winning over a long period of time, from 91 to 2005, 14 straight division championships. 14 straight.
Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, not 7.
Nope. Double that, LeBron James. 14 straight division championships for the Atlanta Braves. 5 NL pennants. Still only 1 World Series, but 5 is still a good number. It's still impressive. And he won 2,401 games overall. That's insane. Like, of the 2,000 managers, of the 13 managers with at least 2,000 career wins, only Joe McCarthy got there in fewer games than Bobby Cox. Like, he was a model of consistency. And you got 1 championship. You kind of feel like maybe you could have won another one, particularly the year where they played the Yankees and they went up 2-0 in the series. And then Jim Leyritz hit that big home run in Atlanta, which flipped the series around and ended up costing the Braves. But of all of that, it was still a phenomenal run. And it has laid the groundwork to where the Braves, I know they hit a rut, but in the last 10 years, you got another world championship. You're in the lead in the NL East. I don't think the Phillies will come back. I know they've played better lately, but I don't think it's going to happen. The Mets are a disaster with their payroll, but it's fiscal responsibility for the Atlanta Braves. They always have been a model of great talent identification, great development of talent, a strong farm system. Never quite have had the pockets of the Dodgers now or the Yankees back in the day. And that's where, I think they're a step below those two. They've been number 2 during each of their times in terms of their level of consistency in the dominant period. And no shame, they've been number 2 without nearly the budget of the teams that were number 1 in the 90s, the Yankees, or the number 1 team right now, the Dodgers, who are going for a 3-peat and 4 championships in an 8-year window. The Braves are not on those levels. But if you're falling short, but still achieving a high level of success, and you get a championship here or there without nearly the amount of resources, even as a Payne Phillies fan, hat tip for the Atlanta Braves and the legacy of Ted Turner and Bobby Cox and what they were able to accomplish. Meanwhile, if you need to tip your cap to a special, you can do so to a Lynchburg Hillcats. Excuse me, cursed it again. Got to put one in the virtual swear jar tray.
$1 in the jar, Ed.
Hill City Howlers tickets are at InsaneRadioDeals.com. Reserved or general admission. You pick based on what you want for your budget, like all the other items. And those Hill City Howlers tickets feature a $10 food voucher with InsaneRadioDeals.com. Also, food experiences and more await you at InsaneRadioDeals.com. More on college sports. David Cunningham of TextSideline.com, 525 today. Then Phil Alloway, including the potential for NASCAR to go back to Chicago. Greasing the right palms? Sure looks like it might have happened. We'll get to that right now in...
It's time for Fast 5 at 5-ish. 5-ish minutes on 5 relevant topics done around 5 p.m.-ish. Ish, because our counting skills are kinda ish. Let's start with number 5.
NASCAR, they are moving closer to going back to Chicago and the Chicago Street Race in downtown Chicago, which would be part of the 2027 NASCAR schedule, said their version of Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport, NFL, or Shams Charania, NBA, that being Jordan Bianchi, The Athletic. It appears this is going to happen. He's pretty well plugged in with these type of developments. I am cynical as all get out, just given how Chicago operates. I mean, maybe I'm the only one. Trey may get into this in the morning, warm up tomorrow, and certainly with their NASCAR guest on Friday.
Michael Massey in studio.
In studio?
In studio. He's here this week for Liberty graduation because he does work for Liberty University during the day job. So he's here all week. He can do Friday morning. So he's joining us Friday morning in studio.
And I'm curious if he and you will opine on the thought that I have. My first thought of NASCAR going from Chicagoland back to the Chicago street course race. Honestly, I'd rather it be at Chicagoland. I think the racing product is better at whatever Chicagoland used to be in NASCAR, with the 1.5 mile setup actually being pretty good and the road setup not being very good. I can't help but wonder, though, I mean, how many palms did you have to grease to pull this off if you're NASCAR? I mean, look at Chicago's historical political scene. It's just the reality of what you've got going forward. That look at the head box. No, the headphone box tray. It almost knocked it off. If you were watching, by the way, VTR and Sports and Fastlane, Ed Lane, Facebook Live, and YouTube, you'll understand why I brought that up. But I can't help but wonder that. From NASCAR, though, from a branding standpoint, being on the Chicago street course gets more casual people involved, and it's a cooler experience. From a nerd standpoint and somebody who just wants good quality racing, I'd rather it be at Chicagoland. I can't believe I'm saying that, but I am, and that's the reality of this situation. Speaking of the reality of good entertainment,
Number 4.
the ACC and the CW have announced their extension through 2030, 2031. After that, who knows how college sports will look. But I'll tip my cap to the CW. And I know there's a little bias. We've had Tom Brenneman, who's done the football games on in the fast lane. But I love this because the CW actually does a really good job with broadcasts. I know we kind of snicker at it because it's kind of known, the CW, for Family Feud. And now they've branched out into sports, including NASCAR's Xfinity, O'Reilly, Busch, whatever you want to call it, their AAA series, which actually does about 1.5 million viewers, which is phenomenal for a AAA sports property. But they do 1.5 million, and the CW has great consistent production of how they TV network, a TV angle it, comment on it, graphics, the package looks top notch. And it's been that way for the ACC, even though they are less likely to be getting your typical Miami Hurricanes, Virginia Tech Hokies type matchup, and more likely to be getting your Virginia Tech Hokies versus the Cal Golden Bears type matchup, where they're okay teams, but kind of meh in terms of the product. And yet the broadcast looks really good. And they have done a fantastic job of taking your Wake Forest NC State matchup and helping it to feel big time. I like the CW. It's kind of the modern version, I'm dating myself once again, of Raycom Jefferson Pilot. Meanwhile,
Number 3.
speaking of phenomenal things in the ACC, I love where Virginia's going. And I would say this, their non-conference schedule and their opportunities speak to the fact their brand value continues to be strong. We mentioned that they have added Connecticut to their non-conference schedule. They will get somebody you would presume to be pretty good in the ACC SEC Challenge. They've got the Maryland series, which now is in College Park. This year, it was in Charlottesville last year. And now they're going to be in the Battle for Atlantis, which features Marquette, Texas A&M, and Virginia this year. First of all, I'd love it if the schedule allows. I don't think it will, but I'd love it if it allows for another trip to the Bahamas, a work trip. And I'm sure my wife, if she's listening, would second that. But don't get your hopes up, honey. Don't think it's likely to happen. But for Virginia, you're getting a lot of marquee matchups. First of all, they are investing financially in the right players to get this program where Ryan Odom wants them to be. More on that in just a moment in the Fast Five at 5-ish. But additionally, his style of play, I have said this and we need to continue to repeat it. It is not the Tony Bennett style. I love Tony Bennett as a brother in Christ, and I love Tony Bennett for what he stands for and wanting the best for people in the world of sports. But the style was challenging to watch for a lot of people. I appreciate it as somebody who can get excited about a 13-10 football game, the 1-0 pitchers duel in baseball, or something like what Tony Bennett put on the court. But for your casual fan, not really. And now the way Virginia has opened it up and they are still performing at a high level in a big brand, it makes them attractive. And we are seeing it with their non-conference matchups, with brands and networks wanting Virginia in a way you never thought they would be told earlier. And for Virginia long-term, planning for what you need going down the road, which is to have a big brand presence whenever the Super League in football forms and however college basketball and other sports look after that. That is where Virginia is rightfully in the correct place. Meanwhile,
Number 2.
Virginia added St. Louis transfer Kalu Anya. He goes along with the 7-foot African player they committed over the weekend. And the Anya transfer to Virginia, you can tell the motivating factor is
dollar bills, y'all.
because the news was broken by On3 when his agent, CJ Ward of Life Sport Management, told On3 about this decision. His agent is code for the driving factor was
dollar bills, y'all.
But hey, good for Virginia. You're playing the game. That's how it has to be played in this day and age. And they've clearly played it well, retaining all of their players that could have returned from last year's team. That is remarkable in and of itself. They added another key player. And look, he only averaged 6.5 points a game. I overlook that if I'm Virginia. I look at the fact that he averaged 7.5 rebounds a game. He can block shots. I think you're asking a lot to believe Anya is going to be the next version of Ugano Onyenso and what Onyenso blossomed into over the course of the season. But if you're Virginia, you've had basically 2 players that could grow into that. That's what I like if I'm a Virginia fan. You're not necessarily guaranteeing one, but if you have 2 that could bring that type of production, it frees up a guy like Testa Ritter to not have to be the banger defensively that accrues fouls. He can defend, but you also can put other people in that spot so the Ritter can then be free to make his offensive contributions felt, which is where his greatest value lies. Meanwhile,
Number 1.
it keeps roping me in. Quarterback, the first season on Netflix. I liked it a lot. Quarterback, the second season, the interest kind of fizzled out. I don't think the personalities were all that captivating. I'm as big of a Dan Campbell fan as anybody for the Lions. I know I'm an Eagles fan, but I love Dan Campbell hype videos. But Jared Goff just doesn't do a lot for me personality-wise. But this year's season 3 for quarterback on Netflix, which debuts July 14th, I'm stoked for this one. You've got Baker Mayfield, who had the plant flag situation when he was at Oklahoma back with Kansas, and has always been a pretty good personality. Cam Ward, I know I'm throwing the U up for that one, but intrigued by his personality and what he's trying to bring to Nashville. Joe Flacco, veteran presence, and Jaden Daniels for the Washington Commanders, which will be fascinating because Jaden Daniels had a great first year, but really struggled last year. And this is where you're going to get some real insight into him. I am excited for that. And for the Commanders, you really should be pleased that Jaden Daniels will be part of this, and you get an inside look at a very intriguing quarterback. Selfishly, as an Eagles fan, I would have loved to have seen Jalen Hurts after last year, but I don't think he'll ever be on that. I think you're really going to have to twist his arm because he just seems to be a much more guarded personality. Meanwhile, someone who's not guarded in his personality, he's very upfront about it. David Cunningham of TextLiveline.com will join us next in the Fast Lane. We will touch on a couple of different topics. Former Hokies coach James Johnson coaching at Ferrum. Virginia Tech football, resources being diverted to it and it impacting who gets on the basketball court this year, and softball and their missed opportunity to host a regional. All of that when we return here in the Fast Lane on the VTRN Sports app and Ask That Smart Speaker, open VTRN Sports.
Don't miss the Declaration of Deals sales event at Magic City Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram. Buy now with big incentives or low financing, or we'll pay your state sales tax. Your choice. Get over $6,000 off MSRP on a new Jeep Grand Cherokee, or save over $6,700 off MSRP on a new Ram 1500 Warlock. Plus, no payments for 90 days at Magic City Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, 1750 Independence Boulevard in Bedford. MagicCityBedford.com. Stock numbers BT1289 and BT12759. With approved credit, see dealer for details. Ends 5/31/26.
Lunchtime just got an upgrade. Stop by Makadu for our $8.95 weekday special and grab a legendary sandwich at an unbeatable price. Choose from your favorite classics, the Coney Island, Betty Bob, Ragtime, or Stogie. Classic sandwiches packed with savory meats and flavors in between fresh bread. Make it a meal by pairing your sandwich with a sidekick, a warm cup of soup, or crispy chips. Great food, cozy vibes, and the best deal in town.
It's time to share it and fun. Just to be there, the only one. Just to be there at Makadu.
We'll see you at the Do's.
Rain takes a toll on your house, including your chimney. Even when it's not raining, prolonged humidity impacts your chimney. Don't wait for the problem to enter your house. Call Black Goose Chimney Service. Featuring decades worth of experience, Black Goose Chimney Service will assess what your chimney needs and give you honest answers. Because the longer you wait, the worse it gets. Get ahead of the problem. Call Black Goose Chimney Service and visit blackgoose.net.
Hey, small to medium business owners, if you're frustrated with slow IT support, high costs, or paying for services you just don't use, it's time for a change. Hi, I'm Colt with We Fix Stupid Computers. We provide reliable on-site and remote support tailored for businesses just like yours. And we go beyond just fixing problems. We empower your staff with real tech knowledge so they can work smarter every day. From repairs to training to full IT support, we save you time, stress, and money. Call We Fix Stupid Computers, 434-525-8590, where smart support meets real savings.
When your mower is down, your crew is down, and downtime costs money. That's why Miller-Built Outdoor Equipment has a sharp focus on commercial turf professionals, Toro commercial mowers, professional handheld equipment, and a service department that understands urgency. If turf is your business, let's build your fleet the right way. Miller-Built Outdoor Equipment, built around your turf.
Hey, Hokie fans! Each offseason, you don't see or hear much. So let TechSideline.com be your eyes and ears for what's really going on with the Virginia Tech Hokies. From basketball roster and staff construction to the buildup of the James Franklin era, we take you behind the scenes of the Hokies. Get exclusive recruiting deep dives, expert roster analysis, and insider updates you won't find anywhere else. Stay ahead of the game this upcoming offseason. Subscribe to TechSideline.com for $12 a month or $120 per year. TechSideline.com. All Hokies, all the time, period.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
It seems like we have made this point often in the Fast Lane, and they are making it as well at TechSideline.com, including on recent TSL podcasts. If you're Virginia Tech, I think they lost Kenny Brooks because of this. You couldn't properly devote and frankly lose money on women's basketball when you need football to be relevant up until we have an idea of where college sports will be going in about 2030 with new college football, potential Super League, and realignment. Men's basketball, it looks like the roster additions from the transfer portal may not be what Hokie fans want. And, you know, I kind of wonder, and they kind of hinted at this on a recent TSL podcast, that maybe it's the nature of where things are right now with James Franklin and his staff, and obviously you promised a lot of resources. You've got to follow through on that. You need to keep that thing going if you're Virginia Tech. And it may stink to not be where you want to be in other sports, but right now, I wouldn't call it all hands on deck, but you got to have the right approach and prioritize in a lot of areas. And if you're in that spot, if you're Virginia Tech, it has been in a lot of cases, and not always, but in a lot of cases at Tech. And I believe it should be a focal point where football is number one. And if others have to kind of, ball on a budget, if you will, it may not be what fans want. They may not be thrilled with the results, but I would preach patience to Virginia Tech fans in sports, especially outside of football, given where we are in college athletics and where Virginia Tech, they're not in the worst spot, but they're not in one of the power conferences, and you don't quite know how you'll fit in with things going forward. Does David Cunningham of TechSideline.com agree with that synopsis here in the Fast Lane? We will ask him as we welcome him back in. This chat with David Cunningham, by the way, presented by Fleet Feet Roanoke's Move-A-Palooza, Saturday, June 20th, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. at Green Hill Park in Salem. David, great to be speaking with you in the Fast Lane. Is Virginia Tech in a spot right now where football has to eat first, and other fans and fans of other sports need to be patient, that they may have to be more judicious in what they get, which might make it a little bit more hit and miss on seasons?
Yeah, Ed, great to be with you. I think it can be to an extent. I think men's basketball is probably the one I would circle right now. Ed, there's been so much, as far as Olympic sports go, scholarship changes, where you used to have in baseball 11.7 scholarships, and that was it. That's all you had for your entire team. Now you can have anyone on scholarship, as many players as you want, but you're capped at 34 players. So some baseball programs around the country have gone all in. Others have gone to 25 or around that, right? Virginia Tech, as what Babcock said last week, is right around the 16 mark this year. So slight increase, but there's going to be gradual differences or increases across all of these Olympic sports as scholarship stuff continues to change. And also, if this 5x5 rule gets passed, where student athletes now have 5 years of eligibility, that might change some things. But as far as resources go, scholarships are part of it. I think a lot of Olympic sports, you're not necessarily devoting a ton of NIL and revenue sharing stuff. And what Babcock said last week, that men's, women's basketball and football are the only three that get rev share. But it does come into play as far as scholarships go. But I look at men's basketball, Ed, as far as, like, you talk about programs that might have to wait a little bit to eat. That's the difficult part here with men's basketball, is that you've got a football program that has to win now, and you are looking potentially at conference realignment a couple years down the road, but you also just hired this great head coach in James Franklin, and he's going to ask for resources. And you're paying that coaching staff like it's a top 10 coaching staff in the country. On top of that, you want to have a roster to kind of match that. I'm not saying Virginia Tech has a top 10 roster necessarily, but I think the Hokies will have a lot of funds necessary to be towards the top of the ACC to compete. When you do that, the resources have to come from somewhere. And I think you might see that in men's basketball a little bit. I think women's basketball is fine for now because the sport hasn't necessarily blossomed and blown up as much as far as, how much you have to pay a roster each year. But Ed, you look at men's basketball, a starting point guard goes for $2.5 to $4 million. That's just the reality of the situation nowadays. On3 wrote a pretty detailed article the other day about what starting position players go for, or the top 10 players in the country at those positions. They're going for a lot of money. In some cases, that might be your entire or most of your entire budget. And there are schools in the ACC, Duke, Carolina, Virginia, Louisville, that can pony up and do that. I don't think Virginia Tech for men's basketball is necessarily in that spot. So it's difficult because you got to balance stuff right now. You can't try to go all in on men's basketball while you're also going all in on football. The resources just don't work. But I think the hope is that football is really good, has a really successful year, and you can also breathe new life into the men's basketball program as a result. But it's a constant tweaking. It's a constant adjustment. And of course, those numbers, Ed, are changing every day.
David Cunningham, TechSideline.com managing editor with us here in the Fast Lane. I can't help but flashback. David might not remember this, but some of the people listening might. The great one-liner from this mythical athlete character in the old beer commercials, his name was Leon, where he had this great line of,
$20 million a year just doesn't go as far as it used to.
$20 million a year just doesn't go as far as it used to. Is that, as funny as it is, the reality for football and basketball, which is money doesn't go as far as it used to. And when you're talking about that much money versus $1 million for wrestling or $1 million for softball, where it's big, in those two sports, football and men's basketball, $20 million or more is what you might need. And it's really hard to get there. And if you have to pick one, football's got to eat first.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it, Ed. We kind of had this discussion. I brought it up the other day on our TSL podcast, as you kind of alluded to earlier. $1 million in a wrestling or a women's basketball. Wrestling did get $1 million in a donation the other day. I don't know that that's necessarily going to the roster, but you get the point. Women's basketball, wrestling, softball, baseball, $1 million to one of those sports is life-changing. $1 million in the men's basketball world might not get you a starter. And that's the reality of the situation nowadays. Football, same kind of thing. $1 million might get you a starter depending on the position, but we are reaching this time in college athletics where the roster cost is going up and up and up and up and up. Just in football and men's basketball. It's kind of still fairly easier, I should say, to compete in all of the other sports, right? If you wanted to go and win a national championship in one of the soccer programs, you could probably pour $1 million into that and construct a great roster, because that situation is completely different. But what the football and men's basketball players are making is far beyond that. And I think when it comes down to football or men's basketball, some schools might choose men's basketball. Some schools might choose football. And right now, Virginia Tech is in the majority football boat. And you have to be when you are bringing in a new coach, again, like James Franklin, the amount of resources he demands, but also you got to get that program right. And as far as men's basketball goes, you just saw it. Hokies put more resources in from last season from the previous season to last season, and it worked out okay. They were a bit better. The product on the court was much improved, but the record, you still missed out on the NCAA tournament. How much do you need to get there? Well, that price continues to go up, but at the same time, Ed, if you look at it from an athletic department standpoint, from what makes money to what breaks even, well, football is the one that's bringing in all the money. Men's basketball is about breaking even, and everything else loses money. So in theory, pushing all this money into men's basketball makes the most sense for a school like Virginia Tech. But again, it's a constantly changing formula and constantly changing numbers, because NIL deals and revenue sharing deals and the roster construction, the money that goes into it, it changes by the day.
David Cunningham stopping by the Fast Lane. They have TSL podcasts. Just subscribe to Tech Sideline where you listen to podcasts so you get them all, because they are all worth listening to. And I can't keep up with the names of all of them. You got one with Bud Foster. You got David Teal. You've got the regular ones with your regular crew and the Friday Q&A, and there may be others in there, so please forgive me for missing all of that. Tying all of this together, though, with David Cunningham of TechSideline.com about where you are if you're looking at for Virginia Tech's particular standpoint. When you get a big project for a building, there's an estimate, but the costs are generally higher. Oftentimes when you need car repair work, it's the same thing. When you're bringing in a coach to build something like Tech once with James Franklin, the cost might often be higher. Were the Hokies aware of that when they hired Franklin? That they had their initial cost, but it might go higher, and you have to account for it, even if that might mean skipping on basketball, or just you have to have the funds knowing that what is asked for initially, there might be more than that that's actually needed.
Yeah, you have to. That's what you have to do if you want to get a very successful coach. He's been around a very long time and has a great winning percentage. And again, he's been a game away from playing in a national championship game, won a Big Ten title. James Franklin's a really talented coach and has proven that. And as a result, you have to give him big time resources. And the ask is always probably going to be lower than you, or higher, I should say, than you really want. But what you're giving initially might be lower than what it ends up being in reality. Because guess what? The price to compete is going to increase. I think, I'm sure the Hokies were aware of that, and they kind of understood. I think that it's all right. We'll fill out the roster, use however much money, however much resources we need, and that'll be that. We'll come up with it. We'll figure it out, right? And if you want to compete the way James Franklin wants to compete and will probably get the Hokies to compete, you have to do that. But as a result, the money's got to come from somewhere else, and you can't necessarily, give both programs quote unquote raises at the same time, especially when it's to the degree that we're talking about. And that's a disappointing way to look at it, I think, from a basketball perspective, Ed. But it's also kind of just the reality of the situation right now.
David Cunningham stopping by with us here in the Fast Lane. We will have plenty of time to discuss more when it comes to football and the program of football and men's basketball. David, overall for men's basketball, though, of what they've added in the transfer portal class to this point, are you pleased with it, knowing what we know about their financial situation, that they've got enough players that Mike Young might be able to squeeze something out of? And again, best case scenario, you're floating with an NCAA tournament berth.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's come along okay. They've added 6 or 7 guys at this point, including a couple really impressive guys. Isaiah Elohim, who came over from Florida Atlantic, Jalen Curry. They've added some pretty talented players. How that meshes, I'm very interested to see, because they have a good core coming back. Those 3 players, Ben Hammond, Amani Hansberry, Tyler Johnson. How do you build on that? There are some questions, obviously, but all things considered, I think it's okay. But part of it also is going to depend on what everyone else in the ACC does, Ed, because if you've got programs that have, say, double the budget of the Hokies, they might have double the better players. But it'll be difficult to figure that out until we get to, say, December and have seen these guys play 10 or so games. But yeah, I think all things considered, the Hokies have put together an okay roster. There are a lot of questions, and the rotation is going to be interesting. And I think maybe they're not done necessarily. I'm not really sure where they stand on that. They might go to add, say, 1 more player. But assuming everyone's healthy, I think they'll be in okay shape. That's the problem last year, though, Ed. They assembled a really good team and then weren't healthy the whole year. And if you take injuries out of the equation, they're probably a shoo-in for the NCAA tournament. But Toby Lawal misses a portion of the year. Tyler Johnson misses almost the entire season. Multiple guys banged up at different points of the year. And just very difficult when you have to kind of play Moneyball a little bit and try to assemble a 7-8 person rotation, and then pieces of that go down.
David, pivoting away from that to 2 other sports, and a hat tip to your colleagues, Sam Mostow for softball and Dylan Teft for baseball. They have been fantastic with coverage of those 2 sports for TechSideline.com, as both of them are heating up in different areas. NCAA Tournament Softball Outlook. Virginia Tech did not get to host a regional. TechSideline.com had a real good tweet, or Tech Sideline had a real good tweet Sunday night and Monday morning about all the factors that went into this realistically. Is there one part that could also be brought up? How much of Virginia Tech softball not hosting the softball tournament? It looks like they're the 17 seed. They go to a 16 seed LSU if you're looking at it from that angle for that particular regional. How much of their seeding situation for softball is the product of not having an athletic director, and let's be real, people on the selection committee not having to answer to anyone, and whoever eventually is the athletic director, it will not have happened under their watch, and they may not harbor that level of animosity?
A little bit, Ed. I mean, I don't know that the Virginia Tech athletic director situation has much to do with Virginia Tech not being able to host. I think logistically, Ed, it's just very difficult. It is a tough situation because it's the same weekend as graduation. And if you historically look back at the last handful of seasons, Virginia Tech's graduation either falls on the weekend that the Hokies play in the ACCs for softball or the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. And it's going to either be one or the other. Well, it's not really a problem if it's an ACC year, but if it's an NCAA year, that poses a little bit of an issue. But the bottom line is it's Southwest Virginia, and there are only so many hotels to go around. Even places like Lubbock, Texas, or Eugene, Oregon have more available. That is from the hosting logistics side of it. And the other part of it is the on-field stuff. And yeah, I think you can point to, oh man, Virginia Tech should have been a top 16 seed in some regard. I think they had some really good stretches of the year and played, I think, at times well enough to be a top 16 team. And they were ranked as high as, I believe, 10th earlier this season. But they also did not play well a couple weeks ago against Georgia Tech, and they lost a midweek to Liberty. And if you look at their strength of schedule, it is far less than that of some of the other SEC teams, LSU and Texas A&M, that got selected above them. And I think it comes down to the metrics, Ed, but it's a two-pronged thing. The Hokies wouldn't have been able to host anyway, but they didn't necessarily have the resume to host. And I think that is kind of simple, to be honest. I don't think it's this big, giant situation that is a mysterious thing that some Virginia Tech fans, I think, are trying to believe and to look into. I think you could argue some of the facts of the actual resume, that maybe that the RPI was a little too harsh on the Hokies in some areas. But at the same time, if they win against Florida State, they play 2 more runs in the ACC tournament championship game, we're probably talking about a top 16 team. But at the same time, they would have had to go on the road regardless because of the hotel situation. So it's unfortunate. But I think they'll go into that regional in Baton Rouge with a chip on their shoulder, and I expect them to play pretty well. And they played a really good Florida State team and played them very tough. Really only needed one more run, and one of those runs that they gave up was scored on a pass ball. So I think the potential is there for them to get out of that regional. LSU is going to be a good team, obviously, and some of the other programs down there are solid. But I think they've got a good chance to advance. It just stinks for a number of reasons that they're not playing in Blacksburg.
Among the other topics that are worth mentioning for Virginia Tech are baseball as well. What needs to happen to them with their series against Clemson starting on Thursday and also Friday and Saturday on the VTRN Sports app, your home for Virginia Tech baseball?
Well, Ed, it's going to be interesting. Dylan Teff wrote a great story earlier today, as you mentioned earlier. And of course, I've got to shout out Sam for the reporting job he did with the softball and the NCAA stuff. He did a phenomenal job, and I highly encourage you to go check out that article. But Dylan Teff wrote earlier today that there's a chance that Clemson softball does not use 1 or 2 of its better pitchers, because the Tigers' really only chance is to go play well in the ACC tournament and then maybe win the whole thing to go to the NCAAs. So as a result, this might be a Clemson squad that is, I don't want to say not at full strength, but that is resting some key players in preparation, because ACC tournament starts Tuesday. It's a very quick turnaround. But Ed, a first-round bye for the Hokies is on the line. And honestly, I think you win this series this weekend, you basically pencil yourself in for the NCAA tournament, because so many of these other bubble teams have slipped up here and there. Virginia Tech's in a pretty good spot. Only took 1 of the 2 games last week against UNCG, but I think if you can take 2 from Clemson, play well, close the regular season out at home, you're talking about a team that is right around 500 in the league, has a pretty good non-conference schedule, top 10 in the country, and will be riding some pretty good momentum into the ACC tournament next week. And say you win a game there, I think it pretty well secures your NCAA tournament spot. So they got everything to play for at this point, and it's going to be really interesting, especially graduation weekend, what kind of reception they get at home.
Meanwhile, $120 a year secures your subscription to TechSideline.com for a full year. It is well worth it to get the insight of David Cunningham, Chris Coleman, Andy Bitter, and the people we mentioned earlier, Sam Mostow on softball and Dylan Teft on baseball, among the other great works. David, thank you for joining us today in the Fast Lane. We always love when we can catch up, and look forward to keeping up with your work when we're following you at Fast Lane Ed Lane on our socials.
Much appreciated. Talk to you soon. Thanks for having me.
David Cunningham with us here in the Fast Lane. When we return, we will connect with Phil Alloway, NASCAR back in Chicago on the streets, and SVG, underappreciated, and the question that was wisely posed on the Happy Hour podcast last night: is he Hall of Fame material already? That when we return in the Fast Lane.
Here we grow again at the Sheeler Motor Mile. It's here, the all-new Motor Mile Chevrolet and Buick in Radford. More brands, more selection, and the same exceptional service you expect from a trusted community partner. Whether you're shopping Chevrolet or Buick, you'll find quality, value, and a team that puts you first. From rugged trucks and SUVs to stylish cars and family-friendly vehicles, the Motor Mile has something for everyone. With straightforward pricing and top dollar for your trade, there's no better place to buy. Bring us your trade, new or older, paid off or not, and see why your car is worth more on a Motor Mile. Plus, with more inventory arriving daily, now is the time to shop the Motor Mile. Sheeler owns the finance company and makes getting approved for credit simple and easy on the Motor Mile. Flexible financing options for every budget to get you on the road fast. Experience the Motor Mile at 3 convenient locations: Christiansburg, Radford, and Pulaski. For over 50 years, we've got Southwest Virginia covered. The all-new Motor Mile Chevrolet and Buick in Radford. Certified friendly staff. No games, no gimmicks. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at MotorMileChevroletBuick.com.
The clock is ticking. Time is running out for Virginia citizens to purchase modern sporting rifles and magazines from Big Boys Guns. Beat the July 1st deadline. Right now, the selection is robust at Big Boys Guns. ARs, AKs, and the most popular handguns will soon be banned from sale in the state of Virginia. Don't wait. Visit Big Boys Guns before the inventory is gone and not allowed to return. Shop 24/7 at BigBoysGuns.com and in store on Route 460 in Blue Ridge.
What if counseling services were just a click away? With secure, confidential telehealth sessions through Central Virginia Counseling, you can connect from wherever you feel most comfortable, anywhere in Virginia. No commute, no waiting rooms, just personalized care designed to meet you where you are. Support is closer than you think. Start your journey today on your terms. Visit centralvirginiacounseling.com to get started.
Summer, hot, steamy. 3 ingredients for an overheated truck. Overheated trucks is an all too often summer problem for diesel trucks. Don't let it happen to you. Go Wicked. Get your diesel truck service for less at Wicked Diesel in Bedford. Wicked Diesel is offering 20% off AC and cooling system repairs, plus oil change and tire rotation for 20% off. Go to wickeddieselva.com and print out the coupon. Go Wicked. Wicked Diesel, Bedford, Virginia.
Take advantage this spring of the early season savings on a new energy-efficient heat pump from Terrell E. Mosley. Now through April, you can get savings up to $1,000 or 12-month 0% financing on qualifying systems. Electricity prices are on the rise, and a new energy heat pump is one way to take the sting out of those electric bills. All it takes is one call to the comfort people at Terrell E. Mosley to take advantage of early season savings on a new high-efficiency heat pump. Visit TerrellEMosley.com.
Step into the fast lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the fast lane.
Are we going to get more dominance? Is he Hall of Fame worthy? That was a question that was posed on the Front Stretch Happy Hour podcast. I think we will get more dominance on road courses and street courses from Shane Van Gisbergen. Is he Hall of Fame worthy? There are times where I hear these type of questions and I'm like, you got to just hat tip it. Because, was it the Derek Jeter hat tip with the kid who hat tips Derek Jeter with the R, the respect, except is it the E or the S that becomes the 2? Which one is it, Trey? You should know
the
your
S.
Okay.
Are you talking about Derek Jeter?
Yeah.
Yeah, the 2.
You know of him better than I do being a Yankees
The
fan.
S.
Yes. Whatever. Hat tip and mad respect for FrontStretch.com's Happy Hour podcast for discussing this. The reason why I think I can get behind the Shane Van Gisbergen is Hall of Fame material, even though he's really dominated road courses and he's not been a disaster at other spots, but he really hasn't come close to getting a victory in any other type of racing, is just the way in which he's won. Listen to this stat. He erased a 29.2 second gap in 18 laps and then won by 7.3 seconds, led by that much with 5 laps to go to win his 6th road course race in the past 7 races. Like, this is total domination. Everyone else gets data on the field. This is the best point that was brought up last night. Everyone's getting data on the car, and they're still not catching SVG. So, someone who was there to witness history in person, Phil Alloway from FrontStretch.com, with us in the fast lane. Phil, great to be speaking with you. First of all, are you still marveling at what you witnessed the way Shane Van Gisbergen erased almost a half a minute gap in deficit in 18 laps and won by almost 10 seconds.
It was quite surprising. I'm not shocked that he was able to put a significant dent into that. I was surprised he was able to get the lead with 7 laps to go. And we should know that 7-second victory was over Michael McDowell. He passed Ty Gibbs to win the race. He actually made up 45 seconds on Ty Gibbs before the end of that race.
He's just trying to pour salt into the wound of a pained Ty Gibbs fan. It really wasn't a bad day for Ty Gibbs. It's just nobody's winning against that type of dominance. You know, you've had the privilege of seeing SVG before. Is he better now than when he first got into this car on road races, street races, and the dominance he has for that?
Obviously he was pretty damn good when he first showed up, but I'd argue just getting used to the next gen car as opposed to a supercar in Australia makes him even more deadly.
Phil Alloway of frontstretch.com is with us here in the Fast Lane. Phil, the other thought that went into my mind, to get my usher on for a moment, I will confess, I often listen to broadcasts, which I did for the race on Sunday. We were traveling, so my wife and kids and I were listening to the race from Watkins Glen. So I critique radio broadcasts more than I do TV broadcasts. But that's your thing. Your Critic84 on Twitter and with frontstretch.com as Phil Alloway is with us in the Fast Lane. How do you cover something like this with SVG where he goes into a race, he is an over 50% probability to win versus the field, he does it. I mean, is he the storyline in spite of that, or are there other storylines that broadcast networks need to try to keep in mind, even though something like this, it's clearly SVG and just how good he is the storyline?
There's always a variety of storylines that you can cover in a race. I couldn't give you an actual number. There might be, it depends on the race. Sometimes there's only a couple big ones. And in this case, Shane Van Gisbergen showing up at whooping tail is a big storyline. But there are other ones out there. And I feel that at times Fox Sports is not the best in covering those other storylines.
You mentioned the challenges of Fox Sports. Where do we go from here other than that Amazon Prime is going to take over and they're going to get the Dale Jr. bump? It seems like, am I off base? Fox Sports has struggled the last couple of years with their NASCAR race coverage. Is that talent? Is that production? Is it a blend of how the races are covered?
I lean towards production at times. Sometimes it's as simple as just not having the cameras in the right places, or the director just doesn't switch at the right time. Some of that's just pure bad luck. Other times, it's just not good decision making. I mean, we'll use the example of that wreck that occurred with 10 laps to go with Barry and Cody Ware, where it appears that their cameras didn't get a view of Cody hitting the barrier and apparently damaging it. However, Fox Sports has the ability to tap into the driver cams that are all available on HBO Max. And they could have pulled that replay and shown the replay of him hitting the barrier. They just didn't do so.
Head scratching so far. With Fox Sports, this being their last race, then it's Prime, there's Turner, and there's, NBC, USA Network, whatever we're calling that particular combination. Out of those three, is Prime the best one that we're going to get going forward? Or do you think all three of them will be upgrades as the season hits the stretch run?
Last year, generally, Prime was probably the best of the bunch. I mean, you have the same on-air crew in the booth for both the Amazon Prime Video and the TNT races, but and you have a fairly steady group with NBC later this summer. I think the Prime broadcasts are probably going to end up being the best. But that's the thing. We don't know. They haven't done anything yet. Perhaps things will be different. I'm looking forward to finding out.
We are as well. Phil Alloway from frontstretch.com in the fast lane on W227 BG Timberlake, WVGMA Lynchburg, WMNA, Gretna, Danville, Southside. Phil, a couple of other nuggets. Scheduling. We'll get into that. One, you were at Watkins Glen this past weekend. A lot was made about the weather and the camping in particular with the torrential rain and how that impacted camping. Not to mention it's Mother's Day weekend, even though the racing weather seemed like it was good on Sunday in spite of all that. It's moving back to a chase race in 2027, or at least later in the year. It was in August in prior years. Is this the only option NASCAR had if you wanted to make this viable?
Well, I don't have the statistics with attendance and all that in front of me because that's not publicly released these days. But yeah, it was obvious that they were advertising this thing substantially, and it sounds like they didn't have a whole lot of takers. I mean, there was a decent amount of people in the stands on Sunday, but oh boy, the camping was down significantly, and a lot of the people that did want to come either couldn't get in their actual lot or had to be pulled in or out via tractors. It's a nightmare. September will be better.
I am optimistic on that as well. I thought August was great when it was held at that time, but September seems a fine solution anyway. Phil, a couple of other bits of scheduling. Speaking of road courses, Chicago, road course, street course likely to come back onto the schedule as opposed to Chicagoland. Is this the right way to look at it? From an entertainment standpoint, Chicagoland would be a better product. But from a building the NASCAR brand, even though the street race is predictable, the hype and the festivity around it and introducing it to new people, that's the value, and NASCAR does need to lean into that.
Yeah, that's more or less why they did the street race, to get the product closer to potential fans. It's the same reason why they were doing a whole lot of street racing and Champ Car and so on and so forth over the years. And we knew when they announced that the street race in Chicago wasn't going to be on the schedule this year that they were going to reevaluate. There was always a possibility that it was going to come back. So I'm not necessarily surprised that they're still trying. I don't know how the fan base is going to feel about that, but I'm not surprised that they're trying again.
No, I'm not either. I like it, but it kind of, as the saying goes, it is what it is. Phil Alloway from frontstretch.com stopping by with us today here in the Fast Lane. Phil, last one for you. Is the feeling that this is a swan song for Dover, the All-Star race this weekend? Is that what you're gathering as well?
I really hope not. Dover's been on the schedule for what's now the NASCAR Cup Series since 1969. It's a unique facility, but this is not the best case scenario for them. Having an all-star race, no points race for Cup, but it's not looking great. I feel like they need to have a lot of people turn out for this, and I just don't know how it's going to work. It's the momentum is not really there right now.
Well said. It sure feels like it's not. Phil Alloway echoing those sentiments as well here in the Fast Lane. Phil, thank you for joining us. Great to chat with you. We'll keep it locked to Critic84 on Twitter and frontstretch.com for all of your work.
Thank you, man.
It's our pleasure to have Phil Alloway with us to wrap up the Fast Lane. That does it for us today. Now to Freddie and Harry in progress, and then NBA playoff action. Cavaliers Pistons tonight that Trey and Ty will recap tomorrow in the morning warm-up from 7 to 8 a.m. right here on the VTRN Sports app and 93.3 FM.
Yeah, and that includes the coaching staff, because while Mike Brown, he's great at the mic and front in the press conferences,